Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our chess variants series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we're looking at some more pawn sideways chess, but a fish fight because well, there's only really Fairy Stockfish that plays pawn sideways chess, but you can make it play against each other. Games where, you know, the same engine plays against itself are not always the very most revealing. They can tend to cancel each other out. But yeah, it can give some very interesting insights as well. And these games were both very, very interesting. So let's just go through that, and you'll see. Well, I think we'll both learn a lot from looking at it. So E3 and C4 is how the fishes like to start. And they go for quite an amorphous sort of setup with double fianchettos, which is quite interesting somehow. Obviously here you're putting pawns in the centre, making sure they're protected, because obviously once you take, you're threatening to move away, so you want to be able to take back immediately. And then having protected the pawn on C4, Stockfish putting the pawn on the bishop on the long diagonal, and you know both fishes there looking to develop their bishops on the diagonals. But this one was quite interesting from the fish playing white, just putting the bishop on A3. But I don't know whether you can guess the follow-up, but I was quite shocked. Rook E8 played, just getting out of that bishop attack, and now the move B4. So just an interesting way of opening the A file and getting the bishop active on this diagonal. That was quite interesting. So A5 played, obviously A takes B4 not threatened, knight BD2 and bishop A6. Quite similar approaches somehow, but I guess that white's achieved just a little bit more there. But the positions, you know, if it was a normal game, you'd say quite equal, and that's not too different in pawn sideways chess. So rook c8, rook e1, I guess, yeah, you know, offering a pawn sacrifice for the two bishops there, which black doesn't take, just goes knight b8, hitting the bishop. We go back. And now black does the same thing again, just b5, just to get rid of this pawn. And this is a really fascinating moment. I mean, remember that pawn structure, because it looks very much like some sort of Queen's Indian, very solid Queen's Indian, or an exchange Slav. Totally dull, right? Nothing can happen in this position. Well, in normal chess, that is true. But in pawn sideways chess, well, I mean, quite a lot can happen, as you'll see. So this was Queen B1, Bishop A6, Rook C1, a little bit of exchanges here. This was what would happen in normal chess as well, just exchange everything off along the C file. G4, G5, engines both like achieving that. I'm not quite sure why they felt the need to play G4, G5, but anyway, stopping, I suppose, you know, anything from stopping white from playing F4 maybe and clamping down on E5, and you know white doing the same. Bishop b2, knight c6, queen c2, queen c7, bishop f1. Nothing much happening. You know, are we just going to exchange off? And now things start to move. So the pawn moves over to c4. So we're opening up the bishop, and suddenly we've moved from an exchange Slav to a sort of I guess a Reti opening now all of a sudden. But it doesn't stop there, because black goes c5. We're now on to a symmetrical English. And now look at this one. The pawn goes across to c3 and across to d3. And we're really into a Reti system. This is kind of a Reti structure. It's a well-known opening system for a white. Colin McNabb used to play this, Scottish grandmaster, used to play this all the time, where black played d5 and took on c4 and white took back on c4. But, I mean, like, you know, you look at where you were just a few moves ago, and all of a sudden the position, the whole structure has been transformed somehow. So takes, and now this move, f4. So putting a bit of sharpness into the position, you know, ready to just to open up the G file. You know, the king would be able to move like that. But of course, black can transform things in all sorts of ways as well. So f5, just doing the same basically to white. So rook a1, and now black repairing his kingside pawn structure. The g file is no longer open. So d4 in the center. White also repairing his pawn structure there, maybe looking for some attack along the h file there. Black dealing with it, just covering the e5 and the g5 squares. I mean, you see how it's very hard, to make any sort of long-term plans in terms of exploiting, weaknesses somehow. It's just fluid all the time. So d3 and e4. So white, all the pawns are just shifting over. I mean, look where they are now. Maybe white looking for a move like d5, for example, just a diamond formation is going to be in the center. So black takes on d4, white takes on f5, and black takes the opportunity to solidify the center. And, well, yeah, I mean, we've got something like a King's Indian attack now. It's just quite incredible. So queen a3 and now a6. Black actually looking to play a5 to consolidate this knight on b4. Rook b1, king g7, knight h4 played, queen b6 and a5. But I mean, if you had some sort of map of where the pawns used to be and where they are now, I mean, you'd just go bananas, right? It's absolutely incredible, this. The position's still around equal. A little check here. So check, check. And now a funny little draw by repetition here. And the engines actually agreed a draw here, but the idea was to do a draw by repetition by... well, actually, I think this position has been repeated 3 times, but just in a slightly different way. First it was the queen coming to h5, g4, and then it was the pawn coming g5 to f5. But the engines were just intending to repeat there. But pretty amazing, right? I mean, just so many things happening in the game, and the pawn structures changing all the time like that. Now you see, in the games that I've played against Stockfish, you've seen quite a bit happening, but this is really, quite extraordinary somehow. Just the whole position changing, and then you're just starting, all over again and seeing what's happening. Really very complicated strategically, I have to say. Really interesting. That was the first game. Let me show you the second game. So let's have a look at the second game. This one was also quite funny. Again, you see the fishes setting up their trusty structure. A little bit differently this time, but it leads the same. A bit of a5 early. And bishop g7, but it's pretty similar somehow. Bishop a3, stopping the king from castling. c6. Oh yeah, this one's weird, isn't it? a2 to b2. Look at that one. Reminded me a little bit of the fish playing double fish random somehow, and starting with a blocked bishop on a1 and not getting it free. This is an incredible move somehow, just to block in the bishop there. So bishop a6, c takes d5, e takes d5, knight e2, and b5 and b4. I mean, look at this! Look at this! And then bishop f8 and knight a2. It's, yeah. I mean, the fish really is playing with an NNUE here, but it's looking a little bit ugly there, I have to say. But okay, you're dealing with the threat. You will be able to get free eventually. Knight a6, b takes a5. I'm not quite sure why b4 isn't possible there. What there actually was about it, but he didn't play it. He played the bishop takes a3. I haven't worked out yet how to get the engines to actually analyse with a pawn sideways chess. When they analyse, they tend to only analyse it as normal chess. So I would like to really get that, because that would be very useful. But yeah, otherwise I'll have to spend some time working out why b4. Maybe queen b3. Maybe there's just a pin on the bishop. It might be just that simple. But okay, we will see. So queen takes a5, and as if by magic, we've got some sort of Carlsbad structure, where once these pawns get exchanged, black's going to have, a backward pawn on c6. Only not really, right? Because you can just move it over d6 to e6 and stabilize the structure if you want. So it's really, it's like this thing, static weaknesses are actually dynamic things, that they're temporary states, and you've maybe got to exploit it quickly, and if you don't, then it can be corrected, and then you might have to start again. It's a really nice form of chess, this, I have to say. So the engines are playing just quite normally. In principle, black's got a bad bishop, but these things are fluid, of course. b4. Of course, always with these weaknesses, it's always about, you can try and stop black from repairing his weaknesses. White's got some pressure now on the d5 pawn, so playing d6 to e6 might not be that easy. And so, yeah, if you can stop black from having time to repair the weaknesses, you might be able to exploit them. But it's quite a delicate operation. So g5, just chasing away the knight. Can you imagine what black did now, actually? I'm not quite sure anymore whether it was this move or the next one. But what is black's general plan going to be here, do you think? Takes g7. There we are. It looked like he had a really horrific kingside weakness. Not anymore. Repaired. So e4 from white. Yeah, again, I think playing very dynamically there, just opening things up before black has the chance to to solidify everything. Very important to play quite dynamically, I think. Queen d2, but that was really nice. You attack the pawn, so he attacks you back. Knight c3. Obviously, if you play to c5, you might think, oh, I can blockade the bishop, but then you'll go d6, right? Probably. So quite funny there. Knight a6, knight c7, queen h6, rook d8. There's nothing much happening. c5 played just to swap off some pieces, and that was a really funny thing somehow. So this is probably something quite fundamental. I mean, the queen's obviously pinning the knight, so you can't take on d5, but Stockfish has sort of allowed all this, right? I'm sure that he could have I'm sure that he saw this from quite a way off somehow, but I think what Stockfish does here is he plays for this endgame with rook and pawn versus rook and knight, because it is actually vaguely scary. I've said this before, right? A rook cannot cope with a pawn on its own, or it can stop it, but it can't capture it. So this pawn is kind of loose, and well, the knight can help, but then the knight can be also attacked by the rook. So I think this is quite a tricky, slightly tricky ending for black. It's not better for black, put it that way. And I thought it was very noticeable here, the pawn and the rook attacking the knight here. Knight on d6, so you're just about coping with that, but now c7, and now rook b1, and we're attacking this. King g7, rook b6, we're attacking the knight, and then this one, pawn e7, just to solidify that knight there. f4, f3, not quite sure why he did that, and now b7, and we got a draw by repetition. a7, b7, a7, b7, and a draw there. So there we are. I mean, I've been going through these games quite quickly. It's not really the goal to, that you can really just learn specific things from it. But I think there were a couple of things in these games that I thought were really important. I mean, to be honest, this one about, rook and knight versus a rook and pawn. Actually, I think you could get some brilliant studies with this sort of material balance, to be honest, because, I mean, what the pawn can do on the 6th, 7th rank is absolutely incredible. You need, what's his name? Stefan, the guy who's always posting on Twitter these incredible studies. You'd really need him to get involved in. I think Stefan Pedersen really need to get him to get involved in this, because what you can do with this material. But also, again, this whole ability again to transform weaknesses. This one was really nice. I mean, you attack the knight, get rid of a knight, and then transform your weaknesses, but also this imperative, I think, to, keep on attacking, keep on playing dynamically, just to not allow the opponent to repair everything. I think it was really, really, really interesting somehow, and really leads to some very recognizable play, but also some quite extraordinary passages. I do love this, repairing your weaknesses, challenging the opponent's pieces, and you think, oh, I'll blockade something with a knight, but no, you'll get hit by d6 or b6. Really quite funny somehow. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed that little look into how the fishes play against each other. I think it gives you some sense of what you can do in the games, and what you should be looking for. Complete changes of pawn structure, for example. I think that's really something we probably humans don't really think about that much, but that could be really effective in this sort of play. And then a rook and knight versus rook and pawn ending. Well worth remembering in your games if you get this. You think, oh, I'm a piece down. No, don't worry. That pawn will cause havoc against a rook and knight. So there we are. Hope you're enjoying this series. Thanks very much for all the positive comments. I was a little bit worried about it, thinking, oh, it's an enthusiasm of mine, but is everyone going to think it's just rather dull somehow? But a lot of enthusiastic comments, so thanks very much, and got lots of interesting stuff around this. So do stay tuned on the channel. I'll be doing plenty of stuff on this. So there we are. Thanks very much for watching.